someone else who has a wealth of information, and we may as well just keep rolling, I reckon. Are you ready there, Colin? So we've got our 5 o'clock speaker here. Rather than me waffle on for 3 minutes, we may as well get Colin up to tell us about Nexus.io. And no, he said he's talking slowly. All right. And yeah, okay, here we go.
I'm going to talk slower today. So today, I usually talk about technology. We're going to still talk about technology a little bit today, but I kind of want to talk about some of the principles and philosophies behind kind of what I believe should be a guiding hand for everything that we're doing. Because we're at a point in, I guess you could call it history, where we're at a turning point where technology is becoming capable of expanding our possibilities beyond anything that we thought, right? And this point has come many times in the past, right? If we look at ancient Egypt, right? They must have had some pretty incredible technology to build pyramids as they built, right? Or all these ancient structures. But yet that technology is not maintained with us, right? The question would be why. So what I'm here to talk about is how we can relate technology into our lives in a way that's healthy, right? If we look at, let's say, in maps, for an instance, right? We all love our navigation, but not nobody knows how to read maps anymore unless they have their phone. We could say, is this trade-off a good trade-off or a bad trade-off? And at what point is the application of technology to our lives healthy, and at what point is it unhealthy? So when we look, there's... Just hold it right here. Yeah, so one of the biggest things, I'll just start with a little of my history in technology. I've pretty much been coding from a young age, from about 11. Got into the Bitcoin code in about 2014. And started really understanding this new way to think. And that's one thing that's inspired me so much about crypto. And that's something that I see applied, across the board, is that it's a different way to think. It's a different way to apply technology. In the world that we live today, technology is applied in a way that, it somewhat limits us. Like the map feature, it does help, but on the other side of it, at what cost to our own capabilities. And, we see all these artificial intelligences that are starting to learn how to map us, right, and understand our desires so that they can, quote unquote, better serve us, right? And that's how technology is being applied in the way of the world today. And it's also being applied to centralized power, right? A lot of these biggest companies in the world are all technological companies, right? Microsoft, Amazon, SpaceX, right? They're trying to use technology to empower themselves, right? Where what we want to be looking at is a fundamental quality or philosophy that drives us forward, right? Because technology to me is temperamental. It comes and it goes. It's just understanding the physical world and understanding how to apply the physical world to a pursuit, right? And it's changed over many, many times through the ages, right? And we're at this point now where these changes, I should say, they're somewhat concerning. Seeing these, I guess, simulation theories saying, we're all just a bunch of electrons and neurons in our brain, and we can upload our brains into these computers to make ourselves these super beings, right? Where I don't necessarily think that's the most proper way to apply technology. That's more kind of like a megalomania. It's a pursuit of power, right? And as the prior speaker spoke, he was stating that most of the technologies and most of the things that we see are based around money. Right? It's based off how can I make more money off of you? How can I apply this in a way where it gives you the illusion of the benefit, but it's always going to be more profitable to me? So one thing that I've noticed through developing decentralized architectures is it's a new paradigm. It's a new way to think. It's a new way to apply technologies in our lives. Instead of seeing everything concentrated through a single gatekeeper or a single server cluster or whatever you may call it, everything's applied in a decentralized way where everybody is verifying one another, somewhat similar to the scientific method. If anyone is familiar, that's what caused the Renaissance to begin, is people were able to start verifying information independently from one another, and it was no longer based on the authority of the state or the church, right? Before that, technology was, purely based off of, what one person said was possible, and their authority and their ethos, essentially, that made that. But the biggest thing that I saw is this self-sufficiency and this application of technology towards a pursuit of true freedom by embodying it in a way that we can allow ourselves to live sovereign lives without the need. But, that comes with another side of it too, is what do we need? What do we need for life? Do we need these navigation maps? Do we need to be on social media, seeing how many people like our posts, trying to see if that validates our own internal, right? What is the proper ways that we can see it, that it's going to bring a healthy growth? And what I generally see in technologies like trees, That is a technology. It is a technology that nature developed itself, right? But the chemistry that goes into making a tree grow is astronomical. We can barely even understand that, right? What makes our bodies work, we can barely even understand as well, right? And so there's all these natural technologies too that we can start to draw from and understand. And if you look, nature is decentralized, right? These roots in these trees are all connected together through mycelia. And they actually learn to share water with one another, and they create these large networks, right? But there's no central tree saying, hey, I have the water, so you all must go through me. They naturally share it amongst each other, right? So these types of symbiotic technologies, I think, are really important, and the philosophies behind it is very important for this day and age, because let's look at Ethereum, right? This was, supposed to be this technology that we'll be able to use to do smart contracts and blah, 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 but now the European Union's even contemplating banning Bitcoin but allowing Ethereum to thrive, right? Why is that? Because why have they talked about making vaccine passports on Ethereum, right? That's the dark side of this technology that we can see when it's applied in the proper way, right? And that's why it's really important to understand these philosophies, right? And that's what I wanted to kind of bring here today, is the philosophy behind what we're building and why we're building it. Because, if you don't have those, then it's, there's a quote I really like. It says, vision without action is a daydream, but action without vision is a nightmare, right? And that's the culmination of a lot of the world, is action without vision. Right? People don't see too far ahead, so we're throwing all of our trash in piles and just dumping it in there. I mean, I just found out today that cast iron was actually taken in World War II because they needed iron for the war, and that's what sold everybody on Teflon pans and now caused us cancer, right? Oh, well, we didn't think about that. Well, now it's too late, right? So you see, and we want to make sure. I want to speak about this today because a lot of us, are building our own crypto projects. We're seeing this light, this possibility that we're capable of doing. But if we don't understand and look a little bit further ahead, we may end up creating the same problem we're trying to get ourselves away from. Ethereum is the embodied example of that, because using it for vaccine passports, I mean, do I need to say more? Right? And so, it's even more important now seeing this technology that was birthed for freedom being used against us, right? Like we're seeing with Ethereum. I mean, you could debate what happened with Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and all of those other things. We see ZK Snarks is funded largely by JP Morgan Chase. Zero Knowledge Cryptography, Pirate Coin, Zcoin, Zcash, all of those use ZK Snarks, funded by JP Morgan Chase. What does that tell you, right? They're moving in. You can't beat them, join them. It's the philosophy. And we're in there, right? We're in a battlefield right now. If you guys don't understand, the world's been at war for quite a long time. Now we're just finally starting to see the kinetic forces of that through Ukraine and everything else. The crypto battlefield has been that way for a long time. If you guys remember from being an OG crypto, remember back in the days when you could just buy and sell Bitcoin for cash, and it was just like you're buying and selling Bitcoin for cash. And then our friend Morpheus, they go after him, they go after our other friend Peter, right? They're trying to shut everybody down. No, you can't do that. You're a money transmitter business, right? Back in the day, crypto, Bitcoin had that spirit. But in these days and ages, if anybody's been to the North American Bitcoin conference recently, how many people have their crypto guineas you're going to get? Oh, buy my token. I'm going to make this app that's going to have a token. You have to use this token to use my app. Okay, so I'm going to have to go buy toilet paper with this token. I'm going to go buy, my Uber with this token, and then I'm going to go buy this, because everybody's got to have a token, right? And in order to have a token, you have to have an economic value for the token. So, everybody's got to have a token, but that's just not, I think, what the future needs, right? And there's all these opportunities or opportunists around that. And, when we understand the philosophies that drive the technology, the philosophies that drive any decisions, then it's a lot easier to discern those things that are aligned with that and not aligned with that. And the most powerful vote that you have, your most powerful vote, is what you choose to energize, what you choose to give your money, your thoughts, your attention, your time. That is your most fundamental vote. So the more we give of our time to these things that aren't worth it, we're empowering our enemies. Even getting mad at, the banks, that's giving them your energy, right? What we need to figure out is how to neutralize it so that we don't energize it anymore, because it becomes a perpetuated cycle of cat and mouse, where one's attacking the other and chasing, and one empowers the other, and then it goes back and forth and back and forth. So understanding these philosophies is really important. So circling back to discovering Bitcoin, right? What I loved about it so much was that it took me in, chewed me, and spit me out 10 times over, right? I coded my whole life, really competent coder. I get into Bitcoin. It's just what is going on? How is this possible? Right? That was what my first thoughts were when I first saw it, because all I know was, how do you make money from a computer program? That sounds like a scam, like everybody says, right? And then you start understanding this, there's transactions that are created but the coin needs to be minted. So you have people solving this complex issue that other people can't solve, and that actually helps solve another problem for people to transacting over the network, which then creates a fee and economic value that then can be monetized by other people running another program. And wow, you have this virtuous economic cycle through a computer program. And I was like, wow, this is incredible, because nothing like this has ever been done before, right? No one had ever been achieved it, and because nobody had ever been able to think the correct way, right? Satoshi had a unique way of thinking, is what birthed Bitcoin and birthed everything that we're pretty much doing here today. If it wasn't for Satoshi, we all probably wouldn't be here, right? And that way of thought is something that takes a while to get to, right? That's one of the biggest challenges I found building Nexus, was just learning to think like Satoshi. And that's why, all these venture capitalists throwing their hundreds of millions of dollars at all these projects, I just laugh, because I know the complexity that it takes to build this. It's an art form, right? You can't buy art like that. You can't go and be like, hey, Leonardo da Vinci, we need you to paint Mona Lisa now. No, it comes as an inspiration, right? It comes through the moment. It comes by you being able to see things different enough that you can create these visions on that, right? And I know a lot of people that are trying to do things that we've done with nothing, right? And they're throwing millions of dollars at it because they don't have that way to think. They always are trying to put this corporate mindset back on it. Oh, well, who's the CEO? I can't tell you how many people say, well, you're the CEO of Nexus. I'm like, there are no CEOs. I mean, I constantly have to remind people there's no CEOs. It's a DAO. What's that? Why are you in crypto if you don't know what that is? I mean, that's what's happened to crypto, right? All these tokens, and a lot of that came from Ethereum, right? And it's just become this new Wall Street. And that's why it's important for all of us, being here to recognize. And, I can't tell you why you're here. I can't tell you what you need to do. I can't tell you what your role is going to be. But what I can ask you is to think about it. Give it a couple more thoughts. Like, what do I really want to achieve? What do I want to see in the world? And how is this technology going to fulfill that? Rather than, what do I want to create so I can have some sort of short-term problem filled? Like, what's the long-term vision? How do you want to see the world? What do you want to see the world become? Right? And then what are the philosophies that are going to drive you to do that? And then how are you going to adjust your way of thinking to accommodate that? Because you may have the vision of that future, but you may not be capable of fulfilling that vision right now. Because maybe you've worked a 9-to-5 job, you've still got some of that corporate program. I don't know. Right? I know my process, I had to learn. I had to go through the ringer, right, of unlearning all of my old ways of thinking, right? Instead of thinking client-server, think peer-to-peer, right? Totally new animal as far as the coding concerned, right? But from that, we've been able to birth a very beautiful technology, and because of that, I'm basically, how should I say this? Like, for me, I do things because I love people and I want to see the world a better place. Right? I build technology from that. We're going to be playing some music tomorrow night. You'll be able to hear kind of that place where it comes from too. We're going to be jamming, and that's one of the reasons that we're adding music in too, because it's hard to relate necessarily to code and technology and all these complicated ideas, but we can all feel, right? And music is kind of one of those, one of the oldest forms of the ability for people to share that type of feeling. You can hear a song and you can understand how that person feels. You can feel where it comes from. Maybe from that can inspire. I don't know. Maybe you guys are already 10 steps ahead of me, and I'm just sitting here talking shit. Who knows? But the idea that this speech I really wanted to ring around is this philosophy, right? And to get us to take a second look at ourselves a little bit and find out what's inspiring to us, what we want to see, and develop things around that, right? Like, one thing that I think is having a token for a different service is not a sustainable economic model for anybody in the future, right? So, that immediately discounts like 97% or 99% of all crypto projects, right? Filecoin is a very good example. Okay? Like, they're built by the IPFS guys. I think they raised $250 million. I don't think they've had anything functional come to market, unless I'm mistaken. $200 million. IPFS, shouldn't it be good? Didn't they make something already? Lost puppies. Why? Because they're building it on a failing economic model. I just met the chairman, the head of the board of the Filecoin Foundation when I was in Austin like a month ago, right? There's the head, there's your head. But the problem with that, right, and I'll get into this is a philosophy that drives this. It is the spider and the starfish, right? Most corporate structures are the spider. It's got your departments and your legs, and it's got the head, it's like the CEO. So what happens if you cut off a spider's head? It dies, right? What if we chop off one of its legs? It can't walk. The starfish, if you chop it in half, you guys know what happens? Anybody know? Yeah, it makes two starfishes. Yeah, because it's a decentralized organism. It has all the internal organs in each arm. So you can chop off an arm and the arm will literally walk off. It's pretty cool. right? It's a very resilient life form because it's decentralized. Even the U.S. military understands the resilience of decentralization. They have decentralized protocols inside the military as safeguards, right? Because you chop off the head, what are you going to do? Because you're going to die, right? So that's one of the really important things that I want to express is let's make sure that we don't create the same thing, right? There's so much opportunity now with this new technology, so much opportunity. I mean, we're at the point of converging artificial intelligence, blockchain, augmented reality. I mean, we have so many possibilities. I mean, microsatellites are becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. They're like the personal computer in the 80s. So, I mean, having your own microsatellite in 20 years is not very far off, right? There's so many things coming to a head right now, and there's so many opportunities that we want to make sure that we drive these opportunities with the correct, I don't want to necessarily say intent, because the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so many people, and what that means is everybody thinks they have good intentions. Hitler thought he had good intentions. He thought he was cleansing the planet, right? It's about your application of what you intend to the result to be, but how will you execute on that intent, right? That's the other side that a lot of people negate and they don't understand. So spending that time to make sure that's right is really important, and spending some time to find out what things that we value, what are philosophies that we value, what are things, qualities of life that we value, what are things that we want to put out in the world, and how can we build a technology around that to facilitate that, but also that facilitates other needs of humanity, right? And that's one of the things that drives me, right? I care about people. The world's completely fucked, so we need as much help as we can to fix it, right? I'm not a problems-oriented person. I'm a solutions-oriented person. As far as the existing system, I think it's completely corrupt and it's completely it needs to just probably go away on its own. I don't have any faith in the court system. I don't have any faith in the military or politics. I mean, it's just another form of swapping kings. It's like playing Russian roulette. Yeah, sure, we got a good king this time. The bullet didn't go off, but what happens when you spin it again? Oh, yep, there goes Fred. Yep, he was a good guy. Played Russian roulette again, right? I mean, that's what happens when we're swapping kings. And we have a basic democracy, right, where you can elect your king. Woo! We elected a king, great. But that's one guy to corrupt, right? One guy. And so let's look at it over. I mean, look in Arizona. Like, we tried to get rid of our head of house or whatever to recall him. He still stayed in. The California governor stayed in, just manipulate the election again, right? I mean, it's so hard to get these guys out. So because of that, but it's so easy to get them in because they just manipulate voting systems. So, like, as far as, like, petitioning governments or anything, it's all garbage to me. Like, it's just garbage, flow, let it go away, right? Like, the world needs something new, right? And it needs things that are based on proper philosophies. The philosophy of what America was founded on is gone. It was gone a long time ago. There's still remnants of it with people like us, right? But a wide variety of people, they're drinking the Kool-Aid, right? So instead of suppressing or being upset at these people, you're brainwashed or whatever, how can we lead them with honey? How can we lead them out of their mindsets instead of brute forcing and trying to make a stink? Like, what are more skillful ways that we can do this? What are more skillful ways that we can change people, right? Do we say, you're wrong? No, the vaccine kills you, man. The vaccine kills you. Oh, no, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. No, it happens all the time, right? We need to find ways to motivate people out of that because people are happy in that because they don't know anything else, right? But if you go to them and say, hey, vaccines are bad, you're like, you're a crazy person because there's all of the corporate programming. So what are skillful ways that we can? One way that I found is, we talk about greed being the root of all evil. It is. I mean, greed has caused a lot of serious issues, but what drives greed, right? It's like a bottomless hole as far as I see it. I say it's kind of like filling a hole with water, right? You feel kind of full for a minute, but then the water slowly leaks. You got to put more water in. We need to fill the hole with dirt, right? What is the hole that everybody has? Well, they're selling their whole lives away for nothing because that's what they think is the best thing to do because that's what their peers think is the best thing to do, right? So the best thing we can do is show them a more profitable way, right? Because then that satisfies their greed. You don't have to be like, you're bad, you're greedy. Be like, hey, man, like, there's a new way. There's a new way that you can do this, and it's better. Look, there's a new way, and then through that new way, it can slowly deprogram, right? That's one thing that we do. It's like help deprogram people in a way where you're not directly grabbing the bull by the horns, but you kind of be like, hey, bull, look, there's some cookies over here. Come over here into this pasture. It's a little greener. See, it's greener. And then the bull's just, hey, man, I found some cookies over here. Let's go over to this pasture. Come here. It's way better than this pasture. I'll just flock over that way, But I don't think people have fully been able to embody that yet. I think Bitcoin started to, right? But Satoshi had to leave for a good reason because he didn't want there to be a king. But, it was still a baby. And so the baby needed to be cared for. And then, hey, little baby, we're taking you in. JP Morgan, AXA Ventures. Yeah, we're going to fix you up, Bitcoin. And then now we have, $100 transaction fees when the network gets congested. That's how that story ended, right? So, there's a lot of the intent and a lot of some of those fundamental philosophies that are starting to be birthed right now, but like we all have to help that along, and help that along by building our projects rooted in those philosophies. We're doing it skillfully, right? By looking at these things, instead of seeing these walls and hitting against them, we find ways to guide around those, right? We find ways to incentivize people, because people aren't naturally going to be good. They're just not. They need an incentive. They need incentivization. And so far, the old system has way better incentives than us, right? And that's something that we need to really focus and think about how we can apply, right? And I don't necessarily think it comes from an infinite tokenization model where you have a token for each service, kind of like Filecoin. Let's say in the future we have Filecoin operating systems. Like, what am I going to have to buy Filecoins every time I want to save a picture? But like, what if I have to buy picture coins to buy my camera? I got to go to this exchange and get picture coins. I got to go over here and get Filecoins. It's just not going to work, right? It's everybody trying to push themselves in to make themselves valid, right? But we need to think of how can we fit together instead of pushing against each other. How can we fit all of our projects together so that they mesh into a global ecosystem instead of trying to make space for ourselves? And like, I'm going to push this guy out here because I've got my Filecoin and we're IPFS, or this other one over here trying to push their space in here and make themselves valid. And let's look for things that are necessary rather than trying to make things that are unnecessary, because I've seen a lot of that too in crypto, And it's really unfortunate on one hand, but it's good on the other hand. For it was expected to happen at some point. People inevitably will try to corrupt something, right? And corruption loves to spread, right? It just does. It's just what happens. I've faced so much corruption time and time and time again. One thing that I've learned about crypto too that's fundamentally missing, EOS and all these projects have failed to understand it, that blockchains don't socially scale either. Decentralized organizations don't socially scale, which means like people can't come to consensus. Try to get 1,000 people to agree on something. It doesn't work. Right? But that's what crypto is trying to do. Like, hey, we got DAO. Cool. We got 10,000 people. Good luck voting. There's always going to be somebody. What about mob rules? How are you going to do that? Everybody wants to do the thing that one person's doing because everybody's doing it, and then everybody follows. And then what? Like, they follow stuff off a cliff. How do you fix that? Well, it's a DAO. Yeah, but like, how do you fix it? Well, no, it's a work in progress. Then why did you raise $100 million for it? It's a work in progress. This happened. Remember the DAO, Ethereum? You remember that, everybody? Yeah. And there's like $80 million slocked on it. Man, it had a security analysis and everything. They didn't know that there was a recursive bug in the Ethereum virtual machine. Oh my God. What that means is like recursion is when a function calls itself. Okay, think of a function as just like a bit of code. And you don't want to like write that code every time. Right? So you have a function. It's like, hey, add 5 plus 5. That function does that. But when you call itself, you could do that with like Fibonacci. The function calls itself recursion, right? Ethereum, a virtual machine, wasn't updating the value of variables when the function called itself, but they allowed the function to call itself, but they didn't update the value. So you can just like call the function over and over and over and over again, and it didn't update the balance. So $80 million later, Ethereum forks, and here we are, right? So I'm seeing, So fundamentally, like, we need to understand that pretty much everything needs to be decentralized, right? Everything needs to go. Like, it's just span. And anything of the old coming into the new, like, it just needs to go, right? Like social structures, they're autocracies, they're plutocracies, they're technocracies. Technocracy is a society that is controlled by technology. That's kind of where they're trying to push it. Autocracy, one guy, auto control, blah, blah, blah. Plutocracy is one run by money, right? This is another problem with DAOs. How are you going to do the vote? Like, oh, well, you buy it. Well, how are you going to compete with $60 trillion of money, of fiat, when you have markets that are driven by fiat? What are you going to do? They have all the money, don't they? So, how easy is it? Oh, this is a $40 million, $100 million company. Oh, it's $50 million, Bobby. We could just go buy all the vote. Look what Elon just did. Hey, he took over Twitter, $44 billion, but still, you can do it, right? So that creates plutocracy. How do we solve these issues, right? We do it through other means with like trust and time and stuff like that to kind of equalize it and make it so you can't buy your way. You have to buy and spend your time. But the philosophy of that is like richer people, time is worth more, so they're going to want to use their time less to do something for silly little peasants that they trust. And then you can't ever get time back once you spend it, right? So like, take a time machine, asshole. They got 5 years on you. Sorry, you're the new guy. But anyway, so we really need to reimagine everything, right? We need to reimagine how we relate to each other, how we connect to each other, how we organize ourselves, right? I mean, even conventionally, you always are going to have a Hefe, you're going to have a Hefes, or whatever. You're going to always have the spider architecture, right? That's a fundamental thing that I see repeating over and over and over and over and over again. A lot of crypto projects, they always have a CEO, CTO, CFO,
You know, I mean, we did that 4 times. And Danny remembers that office. It ended very badly. Nexus is allergic to stuff like that, right? That's where I got some like top-notch like corruption front stand. Like they wanted to hire a CEO who was this vice president of Allergan Pharmaceutical. They're the ones that do Botox, right? So we had like Harvard biz guys like coming in and be like, Colin's just a kid, he doesn't know, blah, blah, blah. We need a big, that guy got roasted. But I learned all his algorithms, Harvard Business. They're dirty. They are so dirty. That's all Harvard Business School teaches you about how to fuck people. Literally, that's all they teach you. This is how you do it legally, blah, 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 blah. So, anyway, from all of that, it's really driven my philosophies further, right? I'm gonna try to circle it all back. When we don't understand why we do something, right, then we'll end up creating something that we didn't intend to create. Now that we're in the midst of all these powerful technologies, like you can create global economies now with crypto. That's pretty powerful technology, right? Even if you're making a token for an app, you're still building a global economy, right? We can develop artificial intelligence algorithms that can start to map more than we've ever been capable of, and might even start thinking for themselves, right? You might want to think that one through, right? Because we all see all the movies, right? What happens. So, because of that, it's just really important for us in this day and age to understand these things and to focus on those philosophies first, right? To let everything come from that vision, from those philosophies, from those ethos, those morals, those things that we have decided to be our contributions, our gifts to the world, and let the technology be a manifestation of that. Because if we don't spend that time doing this now, we could end up creating problems further down the road that we didn't intend. In some ways, Bitcoin has solved these problems, but in other ways, it's created a whole new set of new ones, right? And we don't want to do that again, right? We're at a time where we need to get things done. We need to do something about what's happening in the world, right? I mean, they are trying everything they can. I mean, if they can, they will, right, Ernie? They will, and they have. They've been busy, right? We got to be busy too, right? And sitting around and being mad at them isn't going to change anything. We can look at all of the things that are fucked up about America. Yeah, America is fucked, man. Since 1872 is when they did the whole corporate America, Virginia company. I think it was right after the Civil War, where it went from a republic to a corporation, whatever. America's been fucked for a long time, right? If you look, I mean, even the Gadsden purchase of Lower Arizona, that includes Tucson and Bisbee, that was purchased because they wanted a southern railroad line. Who ran the railroads? Rockefeller, Rothschild, all of them, right? So, that shows a direct influence of, hey, we just need to buy a little bit of a state from Mexico to add, because we want our railroad, right? The railroad company's been in the U.S. government since the beginning. I mean, they know how to corrupt things, right? And the way the United States was designed, it wasn't really designed with these safeguards in place. If you read what some of the founding fathers said, they said, the United States is designed for a religious and moral people, right? It needs ethical people in power for it to work. Because it's just still one person in power calling the shots for everybody. Even though you vote them in, how do you get them out? You can't, unless you try a recall. But then how do you do a recall if their votes are manipulated, right? So, there's so many problems with that to me, it just needs to be discarded, right? We need to focus on creating our own little bubbles, our own little spaces where we can practice these new things, and we can also protect ourselves from them. One of the ways you can do it through legally is through private membership associations. That's a structure that you can put land within, and that puts you in your own jurisdiction. That's actually a backdoor that they've been using. If you ever heard the country club, right? The cops have no jurisdiction. It doesn't have any state, local, county, or federal jurisdiction. Which means if it gets to a court case, they throw it out. This is based off of medieval common law that made its way into U.S. law through case law from the Supreme Court. It's got about 70 Supreme Court cases, right? So private membership associations, those are really important for protecting yourself legally, right? Developing your own social organizations that don't require central leadership. That's really important too, because everybody's so predisposed to feel like somebody knows more than them. That's the program, man. And that's what drives leadership. The world doesn't need another leader. The world doesn't need a savior. The world needs to lead themselves and save themselves. And we need to help people become more skillful and confident in their skills, rather than, no, I'm the jefe. A true leader is somebody that inspires people to be better than what they are and helps them learn that, right? Rather than being like, no, I'm just the most capable person, that's why I'm the leader. That's how it works in the conventional way. But the symbiotic way, right, is in helping those the strong help the weak. They don't exploit the weak, right? We need to help all the people that we can learn that they are competent, that they can be. They just have to put time into it, right? And it's not going to happen overnight. You just have to work. You just have to work at it. That's all. And we need to help people learn to work at it, right? Because everybody here it's going to take to do this, right? We can't have this with leaders and spiders. I mean, yeah, you have an army of spiders, but imagine an army of starfishes, right? Who's going to win? You chop every starfish, you double the population, right? We need to start thinking in these ways, and we need to start helping people think in these ways too, and help lift them up, help them, with this technology, right? Those are philosophies that I see. Help make them feel more competent and more capable, and that ultimately, I think, is going to be part of the impetus of change that we need, right? We're coming out of being slaves, essentially, and the conventional mindset of that is to create, another slave, right? Usually, somebody that's been enslaved either wants to go back to slavery or they want to become the master of another. And we need to be careful of that mindset. We also need to build safeguards against that mindset because I see it happening a lot. It happens in decentralized communities over and over and over again, and DAOs all across, right? We need to have safeguards against all of that. And ultimately, we just need to help people realize that we're all capable of bringing this change. So it's going to take all of us to make this change. And if, we're thinking that somebody else is going to do it for us, or, there's somebody that's more capable or competent, then we withhold our gifts to the world, right? And it's going to take all of us. Some it might help, take them to help them get out of their puddle and realize that they're capable of it too and stop feeling so helpless because we're actually the ones that are allowing all of this to happen. If we change because we just shift our directions, right? If we don't have to feed the supermarkets anymore, we don't really have a choice right now because we don't have our own trade networks, we don't have our own economic, we don't have our own transportation systems, so we have to use it, right? So what do we need? We need our own trade systems, we need our own economics, we need our own, peer-to-peer Uber, right? Like, anybody want to work on it? Go for it. Peer-to-peer, decentralized, Uber. I'm a semi-driver. It's an Uber for semi-trucks. Hey, I need to bring this produce from this farm to this farm, right? We need to create this farmer's market. We need to create this decentralized tokenized economy. Then we're not going to need them anymore, right? And we all want to be away from them. We all want to. We all want to maintain that same quality of life too, right? So it's going to take all of us to build the shit. But just make sure that your Uber uses a consistent currency. Because if I have to buy a new token for every service I use, I'm going to kill myself. Okay? I think that's about all I have to say, unless anybody has any questions. Yeah, keep talking.
Can we roll a bit longer?
What's that?
Keep going.
How long do I have?
Listen to
Well,
Rebecca.
you've got at least 10 more minutes. Come on. What else?
Yeah, questions.
Elon saved the internet with Twitter. Comment.
Universal basic income. Elon's like, I support universal basic income. And they're like, hey, we want, more robots. Elon's like, you should see how advanced Tesla's robots are. Like call response. Okay, Elon's money, where did he make it from? He is the fundamental primary contractor of the United States, okay? My dad co-founded SpaceX. I grew up knowing Elon, blah, 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 Elon. Know a lot of personal stories about him. He's not a good guy. He does not have America's best interests in his heart. He makes all his money off of war. He's got sham. He's trying to drive an electrical business that is destroying lithium in South America, okay? It's empowering China, who controls most of the lithium. I wonder why. Right now he buys Twitter. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, you think that's going to change anything? That's a centralized platform. What's that going to do? Swap kings, Russian roulette. Here we go. Next, right? I mean, it's cool. It's nice to see that people are looking at it, but I mean, everybody being so excited about it is kind of a little worrying. Like, guys, are you not looking through what's happening right now? He's controlled opposition completely. Right? He did a little bit with pumping and dumping, but I mean, he pumped and dumped Bitcoin. I mean, who the fuck does that? He pumped and dumped Doge. He called himself the CEO of Doge. I mean, come on. Like, the guy's just, I think maybe in the beginning he thought he had good intentions, but if you look back, he didn't even really do that well with PayPal. He actually was a silent board member. He got kicked off. He was a silent because he just was incompetent, technically, right? So his competence comes from his employees, the people that he's able to take from other people, right? Trying to buy Twitter to make free speech, I think, what Aaron and Kingsley are doing is a hell of a lot better than what Elon's doing, right? Because they're actually building something that can't be taken over. They're working on making it immutable. They're making it decentralized, right? That's the most important thing. Just buying some big corrupt platform, for one, software can't be easily modified once you've got that many users, okay? So it's going to stay the same platform. He's got all these new shadow ban tools now, though. Who's he going to use it on? And now everybody thinks that Elon's here to save the day, right? And that's what everybody thinks, and that's the fucking problem. Pardon my language, is we don't need a savior, okay? And everybody looks at it like, oh, Elon's going to save us. It's nice to think that. Then you can go drink your shot of whiskey and feel better and go to bed and have that hopium and wake up in the morning. It's like, oh, shit. You got to have another shot or whatever. It's just, we don't need that because that's what's created the problems. That's what's created all of the problems. Is everybody's looking at one person to solve it, right? We need to solve this together, and we solve it by changing these flaws in our thinking. One of the fundamental flaws in our thinking is, I'm not worth it. I can't. I'm not valuable. Oh, that's too much for me. Oh, no, I'm not smart enough. Those are the flaws in thinking. That's what we're programmed to think, right? Because if you weren't, you're a bad slave. Bad slave. Stop thinking. Stop. No, you can't. You're not good at it, okay? Don't do it. No, there's experts here, okay? They know, you don't. You don't have the money to go through college. They do. They went through the indoctrination camp already. No, you don't know. It's not mainstream. It's a conspiracy theory. You got to know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it happens, right? So that's the fundamental flaw in our thinking that I think we really need to assess. You are worth it. You're fucking here, okay? You're all here. We're all here. We're all worth it. We have just different values to give. We just don't always know them immediately, right? But if we're always so afraid to do something because we're afraid of being rejected, or we're afraid of not being good enough, then we're never going to know them. Because we're never going to put them out there and be like, oh, I fucked up. Okay, I'm going to try something else, right? You know, we gotta be aware of those things, right? And that's the thing that I've seen that drives so much of these crypto projects too. Is like, oh no, Vitalik knows. He's the only guy that knows. You know? Everybody that comes to me and is like, oh man, I'd love to be able to code like you. I'm like, you can. And I was like, yeah, shut up, Colin. He would say, no, I can't. I'm like, yeah, you can. I'll show you. You know, if you want to know, you want to go down that rabbit hole, we'll go. Just trust me, we'll have some fun too. Danny knows what I'm talking about.
Right there. You can have it.
There you go. So, yeah, I mean, fundamentally, yeah, these are the things, some of the philosophies that I really wanted to bring to attention to everybody, right? We don't want to make another megalomaniac empire, right? We don't want to make something that creates more of the same problem, just with a different technological framework, right? We need to create a meritocracy where people are rewarded based on their work, right? Where people are rewarded based on what they're capable of doing, so that we inspire more capability rather than incapability. Because the world right now is really inspired by incapability, right? I mean, it's just who has the money and who has the money to give the money and who can bring who in and who has the connections and whatever else, and that breeds all this incompetence. I mean, corrupt people are the most incompetent ones. They're just really competent at corruption, but they're incompetent about everything else. So, you know, take some of these words, you know, think about them, feel them if you feel them, or not. Tell me to shut up if you don't believe. I don't care, you know, whatever. I'm here to say. But, you know, just know that you guys are worth it, right? We're all here. We're all here. This automatically is just, you can't be here and not be worth it, right? We're all valuable. We just have different gifts to give. So look at yourself and find your gifts, man. And, you know, look at what you want to see the world become. And, you know, do something about it. Whether that's picking up a piece of trash or building a new platform, right? You know, if you don't have the capability to do it, don't stop there. The only way you can ever fail is if you give up, right? You don't fail when you fall down when you learn to walk. You do fail, though, if you fall down and you just stay down. You never get up again, right? That's failure, right? So if you just keep getting up, you might have to get up a little more than some people. You know, we all have different things to learn, but just don't ever give up, man. And, you know, look at that and hold that vision in your heart and get to know yourself. And if you're not capable of doing it, you know, make yourself capable. Put in the work, and, you know, you can do anything.
Thank you, Colin. Oh, and we've got Alex Martin from Flote.